And as you've rightly pointed out, there's this growing rupture now with Lavrov, but also within the military versus FSB, which we've seen time and again, to be honest, Jason. I think we can look back to 2023, Wagner and all that, and the shake-up that Putin made towards some of the other senior members of the MOD or Shoigu, that sort of thing. So what makes this one different? Why is this situation more
Well, because
important than the other
they're
case?
well, they're different reasons. I mean, fundamentally, why it occurred was different. I mean, the case of Shoigu, um, and his assistant, his deputy Ivanov, who got 13 years in prison. Now he's volunteered to go join the SVO, the Special Military Operation, to get out of prison. But either way, his deputy went to prison because obviously Shoigu's too senior. They would never send him to prison. It would look bad. It would look very bad. But now he has to show up to meetings wearing civilian clothing. He doesn't wear military outfits anymore. But Gerasimov's also not been seen a lot. Like, just look at the recent photos of Vladimir Putin at different events. You're seeing a lot less Gerasimov, and that's very noticeable. But either way, going back to your question, I think that the big difference is this, is that back then there was an immediate failure. So let's look at this. March 15th, I want to say it was in 2022, we did see a number of senior people get sacked or fired who were related to the intelligence services. That's usually assumed to have been due to the fact that there was such failures with the initial invasion of Ukraine. I mean, the fact that it clearly was not working out as they'd been promised. They had given faulty intelligence to senior leadership. They had said that this would go easily. They'd paid off everybody. This would not be, what it's become now, 3.5 years. Obviously, that was not anticipated by the Kremlin. So we saw a bunch of people get sacked. Now, you go forward a little bit. We saw a number of people, I want to say is 19 of them, but within 2 months or so of the Prigozhin incident, we saw about 19 of them in military. I don't think there was any intelligence, if I recall, but they're all in the military who did get sacked as well, or moved out, or disappeared. But what we see now is different. Is that that's a top-down decision. So those two things were the result or the fruit of actual formal investigations. It would appear because it was so systemic and it was so quick and so many of them at the same time. But this, it's much more personal in nature. I mean, we know that there's a major conflict. There's always been between Bortnikov, for instance, who's the head of the FSB, with Zolotov. We'll use him, Rosgvardia, National Guard. And that conflict is over a lot of different things. And as you know, Rosgvardia, I think the presidential decree was 2016 that allowed them to absorb Sabor and let's call it the riot police in Russia and the SWAT teams in Russia. That was absorbed by his people. But that's something that the FSB doesn't really like because that means that they have less power domestically. But the fact that recently, I think it was quite literally September 11, 2025 as well, the same date, was when Rosgvardia was finally given its long-time desire to allow to keep tanks in Moscow. So why is that? Well, we don't know exactly, but that is something that you normally would not keep in your capital because that's for armor on armor conflict. That's not for putting down riots. So why do they want to have them in the city? The Rosgvardia, not the military, the Rosgvardia. It's because they're directly loyal to Putin. Look at Zolotov himself. He was the bodyguard of Putin. They're close as personal friends. But Putin has always tried to balance these different groups. For instance, if you look at Patrushev, who was the head of the National Security Council, his son, Dima, was the Minister of Agriculture. Now it's Dima's partner, girlfriend, who's the head of Ministry of Agriculture. But he himself is Deputy Prime Minister now. Now, if you look at him or his family, Patrushev, that is actually close to Putin. They've been friends since the early 1970s, or at least mid-1970s. They both served in the KGB. And Dima, the son, who a lot of people used to say was probably going to become the next leader of Russia after Putin. Now look at his case. He has literally known Putin since he was a child. Like since he was born, he has known Putin. So that would make a lot of sense. Not everybody can have that sort of close relationship. But Putin trusts people like that. And that's why you look at the Rottenbergs or the other people who become extremely wealthy while during the Putin regime. It's because they've known him since like childhood. But Putin doesn't, like any person, how many friends do you still have that you had when you're a child? So he doesn't have a ton of guys like that. So he has other people he's picked up along the way who he does trust or he has faith in. Shoigu was one of those people, by the way. It seemed that they did have a personal relationship. But today, he's been disappointed by these people time and time again. And that's why he's appointed so many of his relatives. I think it's 29 relatives of Putin hold senior jobs in Russia. Not senior, they're not ministers, but like deputy minister level. There's a lot of them who are from Putin's family. It's directly blood relatives. So when you look at this, it seems that he doesn't trust his own people as much, and now he's going to rely more and more on his own. If you look 15 years ago, he had no relatives in the government. So what's changed? Why is it the people that were once close to him, who he had so much faith in, he no longer feels that way?